The American people are poised to reject the failed reign of Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the radical left in a momentous landslide. This is an incredible opportunity. This November, the people are going to vote to stop the destruction of our country, and they're going to vote to rescue America's future. I'm here before you to begin to talk about what we must do to achieve that future when we win a triumphant victory in 2022 and when a Republican president takes back the White House in 2024, which I strongly believe will happen. There's a tremendous amount to be done, from reviving our economy to liberating our energy to restoring our standing in the world. But for this afternoon, I want to speak about some of the core elements of our agenda, and in particular, public safety, of which we have very little. There's no higher priority than cleaning up our streets, controlling our borders, stopping the drugs from pouring in, and quickly restoring law and order in America. Under the Democrat rule, in Democrat-run cities, Democrat-run states, and a Democrat-run federal government, the criminals have been given free rein more than ever before. There's never been a time like this. Our streets are riddled with needles and soaked with the blood of innocent victims. Many of our once great cities, from New York to Chicago to LA, where the middle class used to flock to live the American dream, are now war zones, literal war zones. Every day there are stabbings, rapes, murders, and violent assaults of every kind imaginable. Bloody turf wars rage without mercy. Parents are worried sick that their kids will get shot on the way to school or on the way back home. Sadists who prey on children are released on bail, but there is no bail and there is no bond. Unique, never happened before. Drugged out lunatics attacked innocent victims at random. Roving mobs of thieves walk into the stores and walk out with whatever merchandise they can carry. They're left alone. Nobody tells them, don't do this. Put it back now. Homeless encampments are taking over every public park and every patch of green space in previously beautiful urban centers. And the dangerously deranged roam our streets with impunity. We're living in such a different country for one primary reason. There is no longer respect for the law, and there certainly is no order. Our country is now a cesspool of crime. We have blood, death, and suffering on a scale once unthinkable because of the Democrat Party's effort to destroy and dismantle law enforcement all throughout America. It has to stop, and it has to stop now. In Philadelphia last month, a 73-year-old man was walking along the street when he was approached by a band of 7 teenagers who attacked him for sport and beat him to death with a traffic cone. Beat him like you've never seen anyone beaten before, laughing as they bludgeoned the life from their helpless victim, cackling as they left his body on the side of the road, dead. In New York, a 35-year-old woman was stalked back to her building by a homeless career criminal. He slipped into her apartment as she opened the door, stabbed her repeatedly as she screamed for help, and left her bleeding to death in her own bathtub. Previously, that man had been arrested and released more than half a dozen times. Here in Washington, D.C., just a few weeks ago, a hardworking landscaper made the horrible mistake, had the misfortune to blow a few blades of grass into a sitting car, and he was bludgeoned, absolutely bludgeoned and shot cold blood at a point-blank range, leaving behind a grieving wife and 2 children. He was a good man. Everybody loved him. There's so many stories, I could fill a whole speech with them. I could go on with these stories for months and years. A pregnant woman murdered outside her home as she unloaded the gifts from her baby shower. A young girl struck in the head with a bullet while driving her family on her 12th birthday. A 61-year-old woman burglarized, raped, murdered, and set on fire in her home. A 70-year-old woman and a 38-year-old daughter viciously stabbed to death by a man who had been arrested for felony arson just 8 days prior and was immediately released. Just last Saturday, a man was struck by a car while crossing the street in New York, and the driver pulled over and robbed him as he lay unconscious, struggling for his life. You probably saw that. So last night, he was so badly hurt, he was unconscious, and he was robbed by the person that hit him with the car. All on tape. Some of these chilling stories are difficult to hear, but the American people need to hear them, and you have to hear them, especially the politicians in the audience that are going to give us the power to bring our country back and to make our country safe. Murder in our country is up 51%. We must never allow ourselves to grow numb to the violence that is tearing apart the fabric of our nation. It's time to have the courage to say what needs to be said and to do what needs to be done to keep America safe. We've never had a time like this. We've never had anything close to what's happening right now. We owe it to the victims, we owe it to our families, and we owe it to our country to do the right thing. In the Make America Great Again movement, we believe that every citizen of every background should be able to walk anywhere in this nation at any hour of the day without even a thought of being victimized by violent crime. If we don't have safety, we don't have freedom, we don't have a country. America first must mean safety first. We have to have safety. Starting with our new majorities in Congress next year and continuing on to the next Republican president, we need an all-out effort to defeat violent crime in America and strongly defeat it, and be tough and be nasty and be mean if we have to. Here's what we must do to restore public safety. First, we have to give our police back their authority, resources, power, and prestige. We have to leave our police alone. Every time they do something, they're afraid they're going to be destroyed, their pension's going to be taken away, they'll be fired, they'll be put in jail. Let them do their job. Give them back the respect that they deserve. Our great police know what to do. We have to allow them to do it. We need to return to stop and frisk policies in cities and not shy away from it. I watched as other politicians recently apologized for stop and frisk where cities were safe. And they apologized, and those cities are no longer safe. So stop and frisk. It works. Do it judiciously, but it works, and it's worked brilliantly. Take the guns away from the criminals who shouldn't be having guns. Let the people that have to have guns, that need to have guns, let them have them, but take them away from the criminals. If you're a convicted felon and you have a gun, you're off the streets and you know where you go. The mere concept of defunding the police should never again be stated or even heard. It is so ridiculous and so dangerous. Likewise, the idea of stripping them of their liability shields. Think of that. They're in trouble. Go out and hire your own lawyer. We're not going to protect you. We cannot strip them of their liability shield in any way, shape, or form. We have to stay with our police officers. You're never going to have the great officers that we've had over the years. Our police officers are heroes, performing a great public service at great personal risk. It's an unbelievably dangerous job. And by the way, more dangerous today by far, than it has ever been. Rare mistakes are made, but we cannot allow every isolated policing mistake to be turned into a national crisis and all power taken away from our police so that people are killed all over the streets of our country. The radical left's anti-police narrative is a total lie. Let's call it the big lie. Have you ever heard that expression before? The big lie. That's why next year our new majorities in Congress should vote to strengthen qualified immunity and other protections for our great police officers. They have to become our heroes. They are mine, but some people, they don't feel that way. They're going to have to feel that way if we're going to have a great country and a safe country. Our law enforcement heroes of our time, they do their duty to protect U.S. citizens and to protect everybody, whether it's our country or other countries coming in to pay their respects to the United States, which they do less and less now because they're afraid to come in. They see all the stories of safety and the lack of safety. But we must uphold our duty to protect our police officers. Second, because of the radical Democrats and because of what they've done, driving record numbers of officers to resign, retire or quit. The police work all together. The new Congress should immediately pass emergency funding to hire and retain tens of thousands more police officers all across our country. We have to go in the opposite direction. I haven't seen in a long time any bills wanting to be passed where they give the police strength. It's always where let's take more away, let's take more away, let's take immunity, let's take everything we can, take their pensions if they speak a little bit too tough. Can't do that anymore. Our country is going to hell, and it's going to hell very fast. It's a very unsafe place. We need the largest increase in the hiring of police officers in American history, and that's what this will be. And we'll get that done. I have no doubt, Kevin, we'll get that done. Steve, we'll get that done. To get more police on the streets than ever before, walking every beat and with great respect. There should be a squad car on every corner, if that's what it takes to stop the killing. Again, I don't want to make this partisan, but every city, every single city is run by Democrats. Every single city. Where it's in trouble, like the kind of trouble we're talking. It's run by Democrats and the crazy policies that they put forth. And they can't believe them. And certainly after all of this time with the bad results, you would say, gee, it's time to make a change. But I really believe even a majority of the Democrats would say, because they don't want to be brutalized, a majority of Democrat voters would say exactly what I'm saying is right. Third, we need a no-holds-barred national campaign to dismantle gangs and organized street crime in America. During my presidency, we sent tens of thousands of MS-13 gang members back out of our country. We'd either ideally send them out, and in some cases they were so bad and so dangerous, we put them in jail because we didn't trust the other countries to hold them. Because, as you know, other countries very happily send all of their criminals now through our open border into the United States. They're emptying their jails into the United States. We're like a dumping ground. We're not going to allow that to happen. We know where these gangs operate, what streets they control. We even know their names. The police officers know their names. The problem is they're not allowed to do anything about it. And they want to. We need to get in there immediately. Go into every drug den, every stash house, every hideaway, and round up the dealers and killers and the gang members and charge them with any and every crime that we find. And there are a lot of them, drug crimes, sex crimes, all sorts of crimes, vicious, vicious, horrible crimes like we've really never seen before, certainly not on a scale like this. We're a war zone. To lead this effort, a joint violent crime task force composed of the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security should be tasked with destroying these organizations, and the penalties should be very, very severe. If you look at countries throughout the world, the ones that don't have a drug problem are those that institute a very quick trial death penalty sentence for drug dealers. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? But you know what? That's the ones that don't have any problem. It doesn't take 15 years in court. It goes quickly, and you execute a drug dealer and you'll save 500 lives because they kill on average 500 people. It's terrible to say, but you take a look at every country in this world that doesn't have a problem with drugs. They have a very strong death penalty for the people that sell drugs. If we're going to stop this scourge, it's time to get brutally tough on the dealers and traffickers and narco-terrorist cartels who are stealing over 200,000 American lives a year. And that's a very low number compared to what the real number is. It's a very think of it, 200,000. You don't lose that in wars. You don't lose that in wars. And yes, these drug traffickers should and must receive the death penalty. And I'll tell you, just from dealing with the heads of other countries, I said to President Xi of China, do you have a drug problem? No, no, no. Why do we ask such a question? No. He almost didn't know what I was talking about. No, no. I said, why do you think? Well, if somebody is selling drugs, they get the quick trial. Quick trial. Never forget. What is quick trial? Meaning it goes fast. And they get the death penalty. But when I asked him, I said, do you have in any way no drug problem? They do have a drug problem. You know what they do? They make drugs and send them into our country. But I had it stopped. That was a drug problem they had. We had it stopped. Now it's bigger fentanyl. They make it, most of it, and they send it through Mexico, through the border. And we had it just about stopped. And now the border, as you know, is just a horrible situation. But you look at Singapore, you look at other countries where they have the death penalty. They have no drug problem whatsoever. And if we did that, in 1 year, even if it was not strong, because it's never going to be quite like China, I would say. What do you think, Kevin? Do you think it will ever be like? I don't think so. No matter what we do, no matter how tough we get, it won't be quite. You know what a quick trial is, right? 2 hours. That's what not 2 years, not 20 years. No, we're not going to have that. But just by the mere fact that you have that, immediately, Newt, drug dealing would go down and deaths would go down by at least 50%. 5-0. 5-0. If the radical Democrat politicians at the state, local levels refuse to protect public safety and instead turns criminals loose to prey upon the innocent, then the federal government will have no choice but to step in, not wait for the governors anymore. I was mandated, wait for the governors, but sometimes I couldn't do that. I was watching too many things happen in Minnesota, Minneapolis. What happened if we didn't send in the National Guard? They wouldn't have a city left. But you have to wait for the governors, in theory. We shouldn't be doing that anymore. If a governor wants to have vast numbers of people killed and riots and all of the problems that we have, we're not going to wait any longer. We're going to pass legislation where we can immediately go in and help those people that are under siege and they have governors that don't know what they're doing. Under these circumstances, the federal government has the right, really, they have the right to do what they want to do, but we can't do that. We can't give that. It's a duty for us to use every tool, every authority and constitutional power at our disposal to defend the citizens of our country. If we have a weak, foolish, and stupid governor that is allowing the kind of things that you saw to take place, we have to be able to go in and we have to be able to clean out the mess, and it has to be cleaned out quickly, strongly, has to go very fast. Just last week, a man tried to stab a sitting member of Congress running for governor of New York, Lee Zeldin. Good man, good person. And under the New York State policies, the attacker was released within hours on cashless bail. And according to a study reported last week in the Wall Street Journal, a majority of murders in Baltimore are committed by suspects who should rightfully be in prison, but are instead roaming free under Democrat rule. Almost all Democrat rule. Amazing, isn't it? The next Congress and the next president should crack down on this insanity and crack down very, very hard and very, very quickly. The civil liberties of people, the safety of law-abiding Americans cannot be violated by weak mayors and cowardly governors or people that just don't know what they're doing. Because you'd actually say, look, these are smart people. They don't get there without being intelligent people. They must know. The only other thing you could say is they hate our country. And I don't know, it's hard to believe they hate our country, but a lot of people say they hate our country. It's the only reason they'd allow things like this to happen. Because just from a common sense standpoint, how can you allow it to happen? And just look at the statistics, how bad it becomes. Where there are radical and racist prosecutors denying citizens the full protection of the laws, those officers need to be investigated by the federal government, and their systematic violations of civil rights has to be taken care of. And where there is a true and total breakdown of law and order, where citizens' most basic rights have been violated, then the federal government can and should send the National Guard to restore order and secure the peace without having to wait for the approval of some governor that thinks it's politically incorrect to call them in. When governors refuse to protect their people, we need to bring in what's necessary anyway. We have to go beyond the governor. Another 60 people were shot. Think of this. It's not even possible. Were shot in Chicago over the weekend. In Afghanistan, for 18 months, not one of our soldiers was killed. And they had that number of people shot in Chicago over the weekend. Think of it. Many died, by the way. Many died. When that many are shot, a lot are going to die. And this is constant in Chicago. And this cannot go on anymore. Every other approach has been considered and tried. And they've tried the weak approach. They've been trying it for years and really trying it over the last couple of years. And it's not working. It's time to go a different direction. And only one option remains. The next president needs to send the National Guard to the most dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago until safety can be successfully restored, which can happen very, very quickly. Fifth, we have to take back our streets and public spaces from the homeless, the drug addicted, and the dangerously deranged. What's happened to our cities? Look at San Francisco, such a beautiful city. And today people don't even look at the beauty. They just want to try and make it to their office or their home. Less than 2 weeks ago, a beloved NASCAR star, great star, Bobby East, was stabbed to death out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. This man showed up out of nowhere by a homeless man as he filled up his car. Bobby was filling up his car at a gas station, and this man viciously attacked him in California, killed him. Days earlier, an Olympian in women's volleyball, great player, was attacked by a homeless man as she was walking down the street and brutally hit in the face with a metal club, almost causing her death and very close to causing blindness. No civilized society turns over its public spaces to be dominated by drug addicts or the homeless, no matter what the reason may be. If liberals think it's somehow compassionate, let them invite the homeless to camp in their backyards, soil their property, attack their families, and use drugs where their children are trying to play. Let them try it. Let them try it. Letting people live in the street of a major city, or anywhere for that matter, with needles, drugs, squalor, is not good for anybody. For the good of everyone involved, the homeless need to go to shelters, the long-term mentally ill need to go to institutions, and the unhoused drug addicts need to go to rehab, or if necessary, an appropriate jail. They've taken over our cities, so many of our cities. It's at a level that nobody can even believe. But wherever they go, surrendering our parks and sidewalks to people that in many cases are crazed, very sick, it's just not an option. Look, we have a problem. This is a big problem. How do you handle these hundreds of thousands of people getting worse all the time? Hundreds of thousands. It would take years to build hospitals and housing facilities to take care of them, okay? Let's put that out. I did very well in the real estate business. It takes a long time to build houses and housing, years and years. Right now, they're putting homeless in super luxury hotels, the best hotels in the world, paying more money than they're charging for wealthy people who would have usually stayed there. They're paying more money, thousands and thousands of dollars a night. And even at that, the owners of the hotels are unhappy because wealthy people aren't staying there anymore. They don't want to stay there. With all of that, they don't want to stay there. I fought very hard and very successfully in stopping tents being built on D.C. public property, very hard. Every time I drive through the streets of our beautiful D.C. with the most beautiful monuments, everything's so beautiful, and then I'd see a cluster of tents and others, and I'd see it happening, and I'd send people out immediately. Secret Service, by the way, did a phenomenal job. I'd send people out immediately to get rid of those tents before you, when you have 5 or 6 or 8, but when you have hundreds of them and even thousands of them, very hard to do it. It becomes too late. But coming in today, for the first time since I left Washington, D.C., it is not recognizable what's happened. They have tents with homeless and others all over. I think the most beautiful public spaces anywhere in the world. I don't care. I can look at canyons. I can look at oceans. I think the most beautiful public spaces in the world. They don't look beautiful now. Who is going to want to come to Washington, D.C., and perhaps even more importantly, when a foreign leader comes and they have meetings here, it leaves such a bad impression. They go home and say, what kind of a country has the United States turned into? And you don't think that gets around? You have to see what I saw today coming in. The streets were dirty. They were littered with papers. Main highway, main roads coming in. The main roads that we all take. They had more bottles and cigarettes and everything you could imagine. Paper of all kinds, from all places, lying along the roads. That's without the tents. And then you look at the tents and the homeless, and you say, what's happening to this great bastion? Perhaps some people will not like hearing this, but the only way you're going to remove the hundreds of thousands of people, and maybe throughout our nation, millions of people we're talking about, and help make our cities clean, safe, and beautiful again, is to open up large parcels of inexpensive land in the outer reaches of the cities, bring medical professionals, including doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, drug rehab specialists, build permanent bathrooms and other facilities, make them good, make them hard, but build them fast, and create thousands and thousands of high-quality tents, which can be done in one day. And you have to move people out. Now, some people say, oh, that's so horrible. No, what's horrible is what's happening now. Because now they're in tents, but most of them aren't even tents that function. But we have to do it because you can put up a tent in one day. It would be 2 years, 3 years, long time if you're going to build housing that would take care of the kind of numbers that we're talking. We're talking about hundreds of thousands and probably millions of people. It will be the ambition of these people and all of us to get their life back on track, leave the tent city and be back into the mainstream of society, which is where they want to be. It's a great thing. Now, the media will go out and say, oh, Trump wants to build tents. No, I want to take care of the people, because nothing could be as bad as what's happening to them right now. And at the same time, I want to save our cities, because you're going to have a time when nobody will be here anymore. Nobody will come here. Nobody will come to New York or Chicago, Los Angeles, or any of our cities to build millions of units of housing or hold homeless people in luxury hotels, which are costing a fortune for the government, and have no medical or rehab professionals available. There are none available. Is fruitless, just like setting up a blue ribbon committee stuffed with publicity-seeking socialites, I know them all, and dilettantes, I know them all, to handle the coyotes, the caravans, the very tough drug dealers and human traffickers, is fruitless. They set up blue ribbon committees. Everyone calls, oh, could I be on a blue ribbon committee? Headed up by Mrs. Vanderbilt. To empower local communities to deal with these challenges, the next Congress should pass a landmark package of public health, public safety, and mental health care reforms. Cleaner streets are safer streets, and I will be happy to help campaign for any of those bills. And I can tell you, speaking for Kevin and Steve and all of the congressmen and women in the room and the senators in the room, of which we have many, I think we'll have no trouble getting votes for that, cleaning up our cities and cleaning up our countries and making it safer by a lot. We must restore the age-old right to self-defense. We have to be able to defend ourselves. We've all heard the story of the bodega worker on the night shift in New York who was violently assaulted. Violent. It was on camera, on tape, 3 different directions, by a man attempting to steal a bag of potato chips. When he stabbed the man in self-defense, after being really roughed up and beat up, punched in the face, and the bodega worker was charged with murder. But thankfully, after a lot of pressure, those charges have been dropped. They have been dropped. Amazing. But the message sent by jailing this man was that if you're attacked, you must lie down as an act of sacrifice and let yourself be pummeled and beaten to death to uphold the left's vision of reimagining public safety. Their vision is sick. The federal government needs to aggressively protect the right to self-defense in every jurisdiction where it is now under threat. It has to. If necessary, Congress should pass legislation spurring the Biden administration to act. I don't know how they can say no to it, but they'll find a way.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. I want to tell you about the Patriot Gold Group. But first, let me tell you that the S&P has already lost $8.2 trillion in 2022. Did you know that? Peak inflation is not even hit despite the Fed rate hikes on groceries, on gas. You know it as well as I do. Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs are warning of another 20% drop. Inflation is winning in a knockout right now. The Fed is going to raise rates again at the end of July. Meanwhile, Goldman, Wells Fargo, and Bloomberg are all forecasting gold to surpass all-time highs. If you want to invest in gold, call 888-936-2373 now. Call the Patriot Gold Group today and ask about their no-fee-for-life IRA. Sounds like a good deal, don't it? Here's the number, 888-936-2373. 888-936-2373 for the Patriot Gold Group.